What is up, Wizards fans? Welcome into another Believe in Wizards podcast. I'm Matt Modderno. Pleased to be joined here today by Mike LaTulip. He's a great college basketball analyst covering everything for Field of 68 and also Illinois basketball specifically for the Illini Inquirer. We're going to talk a little Will Riley here, the Wizards' 21st pick in the first round of this year's 2025 draft. Mike, first of all, how you doing? And thanks for coming on here.
I'm doing great. This is amazing. It's great to be on here with you. It's great to talk some Wiz. I'm bullish on the Wizards, and
love that.
I'm excited to dive into it.
Cool. Well, I mentioned you are a former Illini basketball player, but also still cover the team and college basketball as a whole. So you've seen as much Will Riley as probably anybody we could get on here to talk about this. I guess just first thoughts. What do you think of the pick overall for the Wizards?
I like the pick. I really fell in love with Will's game, and not only just watching him at Illinois, but watching him before he got to Illinois. I think the thing you have to understand about Will and his standing in this draft is he was never going to skyrocket up boards because he's not what I would call one of those like workout darlings.
Sure.
So, meaning if you sat down and you watched him work out, it's not the most aesthetically pleasing experience because he's very herky-jerky, and I'll touch on why that's such an important part of his game. He's not like this top-tier athlete for his size. Think like Cedric Coward and Yegor Demin, these guys that come in and they're just very, fluid, and the mechanics and all this stuff, the length and the size that all these front offices get enamored with in the workout portion of it. But, for Will, his game is most conducive for real basketball, for 5-on-5 basketball, because his game is most accentuated. Like his IQ, his cutting gets accentuated where he can manipulate a defense. I definitely want to talk about the arsenal of moves that he has and why that's important, especially going to the next level. But bottom line, Will Riley's a basketball player, and he had 20 guys go in front of him, and I'd say they're as far as feel for the game, there aren't many guys that went ahead of him that have the type of feel for the game that Will has. So we'll see how he navigates through this roster, this Wizards roster in particular, but I'm confident that he's going to put himself in position to have a successful NBA career.
I think a lot of people have decided that this Wizards front office is looking for guys with positional size and things like that. And obviously 6'8", doesn't have the crazy wingspan to match and some of those measurables, but they also seem to be looking for guys that they can kind of buy low on, essentially, is maybe the wrong term here, but get in early on, I think is a good way to put it. And I think Will Riley was one of those guys where if he'd come back to college basketball this year, could have had an absolutely huge year. And maybe we're talking about him, somewhere in the middle of the lottery next year, potentially, because I think he's definitely a better shooter than maybe those percentages would indicate. A lot of that came down to Illinois spacing last year. I think like we saw Kaspar Sakachonis struggle at times as well, especially when Ivisic went out. Things just really kind of bottled up for them. I forget what the stat is. You probably know this one, but it was like when Illinois shoots, 28% from three, they basically just win everything always. And when they don't, they basically lose. So just that, if they were just a marginal shooting team, it seemed to have a lot of positive effect for them. And that was because I think it enabled people like Will Riley to do Will Riley things and find spots on the court and create mismatches, get advantages, and just make shots at that point. And I don't know. That was just sort of my take on him. If this is a guy that could have really popped maybe in year two around a little more help and a little more spacing.
Yeah, and I think the thing to keep in mind too is where he sat on the team and his role on the team was very new for him coming from prep, but very, very, I think, conducive for what he may be as a Wizard, he was learning, man. I mean, he's got so much confidence and belief in himself. I mean, the season opener, he had 31 points. And you're sitting there, you're like, oh my God.
Who's this guy? Yeah.
Off the bench. And he came off the bench most of the year. He came into the starting lineup late in the year. But I think the thing with Will is, yes, I would label him as a project. Absolutely. But it's very rare for these types of projects to have this type of advanced feel. And a lot of it right now for him, and this is like to get into his game specifically, when you are a little bit thin and when you are lacking a little bit in strength, you need to find ways to combat that. And at Will's size, 6'8", 190 pounds maybe, he does a hell of a job of combating that. Meaning, hey, if I'm a little bit thinner and I'm a little bit, weaker than my defenders, how do I combat that? And the way he combats it is, all right, I'm dribbling down the left slot going towards the baseline. You try to put your chest into my right shoulder. And for a lot of guys, that knocks them off platform. They need to have their feet set. He just learned over the years to say, your physicality I'm going to use against you. You just push me right into a little fadeaway on the baseline. Great. I'm totally comfortable taking that. Like, are you comfortable taking uncomfortable shots? Yeah. And he's learned how to do that. Doesn't need a great base. Doesn't need his feet set. I'm going down the right slot and you try to level me off and you chest to chest with my shoulder. Cool. You just push me right into a step back going right. And truly, like when you watch that, that is how he compensates for that. And then some of the stuff going to the rim, he's a very confrontational driver, despite the lack of size and strength. He goes straight through your chest, wants to get to the free throw line, doesn't shy away from contact. And when he's playing in that middle third of the floor, there's just this innate ability that he has where, when guys feel like they can really get into him from, 17 to 20 feet, the second your leverage leans on him, he spins off. It's just natural for him. And that's why when I watch him, like you can go through workouts and try to teach guys that, but there's guys that just have that and know how to play. So that's why I'm really excited about him. And, the Wizards, it's becoming kind of crowded, especially at that wing spot, but I just trust in his ability, whether it's spending some time with the Go-Go's this year, spending some time in the G League, like eventually, his name's going to be called and he's going to deliver because he's just got the tools are so good. And I just thought at the 21st pick and your second pick in the first round, it's not a bad guy to get at all.
Yeah, for sure. I see the long-term vision there. I've seen some stuff on like Wizards Twitter of like sort of pigeonholing him as like, oh, he's our new 3-and-D guy. And I don't think that's how he profiles at all, honestly. Like, I mean, I hope he hits some threes and I hope he plays some D, but like that to me is a very just like almost pejorative like box to put somebody in of just we're limiting you. And I think he's got a lot more, stuff to him than that.
He can really shoot it. He can. This is maybe too far in the weeds, but there was a point in time this year, I think in his first 6 games this year, he had 3 4-point plays or, 4 or 5 fouled on a 3-pointer situations. And then I thought he looked for it as as things started to go on. Like he almost completely abandoned his base and pulled the string because he was almost looking for that foul that he could draw because he does kind of flare his feet out. And so I thought he kind of lost sight of
just making shots,
just a good foundation of shooting the basketball. So I think they'll get some of that out of him. And he'll just be able to have that solid base rotation. He gets great lift on his shot, which is always a good indicator. Like I look at Rasheer Fleming, and it's like, hey, can the shooting translate? Because it's like a line drive, and now you got to move back, and you're already shooting a line drive. Will gets considerable. It's not like Lou Dort arc, but it's considerable arc on his shot. So then the defense, look again, he's not a guy that's like release the hounds. We're gonna get into you heat in the kitchen. But his IQ, if you have a high IQ offensively, you can have a really high IQ defensively. So where he exceeds right now is positionally. Right? His positioning off the ball, his kind of knowing when to help. And that's a really good baseline for guys to have so that, once you get a little bit stronger, get a little bit more athletic, now you're really accepting the challenge defensively. So, can he grow into a 3-and-D guy? Yeah, I think he can. Is he that right now? I don't think so. And that's probably to be expected for a 19-year-old guy.
Yeah, and that's fine. I think I meant it more the other way of like, I think he can grow beyond that. Like, I wouldn't say like this is the only thing I expect him to be. Like, I think he can be an actual offense generator, shot maker for a team and go on crazy. And that's what I think you're drafting him to do. Hopefully, if he, at the end of the day, all he is a guy that sits in the corner and hits threes and plays some defense. I think
he can be more than that. Yeah. Like the most optimized version of Will Riley. Like if he hits his ceiling, I would implore anybody that has access to go back and watch him on the AAU circuit. He had a game where he played against Team Durant, and I want to say he ended up like something crazy. It was 16 to 17 from the floor.
Jeez. Okay.
I mean, it is It was crazy. And I remember going on an Illinois podcast talking about his commitment. I'm like, it's been a long time since I've seen a guy do that. And I know, like, I'm talking about this and it's AAU and it's this and that.
That
you
matters.
watch it and it's like a magnet. Like his ability to put the ball in the basket, and I talked about kind of the herky jerkiness. Like there's real, like, I think 15 plus points per game, like that beyond that, like type of ceiling for Will because of his ability to play. Like I agree with you. I wouldn't pigeonhole him into a 3-and-D type of guy, because there's too much feel and skill there for him to just be that. But if he had to just be that, it's not a horrible outcome for him.
You mentioned like just being a little raw, and obviously we want to see him develop physically and things like that, and clean up some of the stuff we talked about from just making shots and through coaching and film study and all those kinds of things. But it seemed like he was almost ahead of schedule this year in terms of the level of production Illinois got from him based on, where he was at, that he was putting up, 13-ish points in the Big Ten year one with other freshmen on the court with him as kind of a, underdeveloped guy. I thought was like an amazing sign that he did this almost just off like base instinct and feel alone. And if you polish all those other things, it's like, oh, okay. Like this is why I think that made him like a very Wizards front office-y pick. Is this may look really smart a couple years down the road, I think.
I mean, he had almost 13 points a game. I think he was, and in the biggest moments too, in March, I think he went up to 16 points a game just in those 6 games in March. But that's 13 points a game. And there was about a month and a half of the season where he was just in a funk trying to adjust to this new role. So you think about if he even came out and was more consistent throughout the season, you're looking at a 15, 16 point per game guy. And just when Kasparis went down and he was tasked with more kind of real playmaking, he was close to a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. He makes really good reads. I'd almost label him as like a multi-read type of guy. He's a really good cutter and a really good passer. Like he was able to grow in that area and became a lot more comfortable by the end of the year. And really, I thought outside of Kasparis, he became just a really trusted handler for them. Like really trusted. He didn't turn the ball over much. He just made the right plays and was still a threat to find his way into the paint, playing off of 2 feet, pivots, footwork. Just a really, really unique arsenal that I thought, you're right. Like it was kind of ahead of schedule. That's why I think about, how people say like, oh, he's really raw and he's a project. And I think he's a project too, because I think it's more physical, the stuff that he has to grow into, but the tools, like he's got the tools. The tools, like I would rather
how do you maximize them or actualize them, right?
I would rather have the project where you gotta, work on the physical side than be like, we got to give this guy some sort of arsenal. Like that's really hard to learn.
The thing I liked about it, and this is something I'd love your take on, the longer I do this, the more basketball I watch. I think the guys that come in ahead of schedule or profiles above average ball handlers at their position are the guys that are like able to really sort of maximize their potential. If you can't put the ball on the floor at all, I think it's just that much harder for you to be a really impactful basketball player. And you look at sort of just not comparing him to some of the best guys in the league, but like guys that end up really good are usually better than the rest of their position at putting the ball on the floor and things like that. And I think Will Riley is a guy that's ahead of schedule, as a ball handler for a 6'8" wing, compared to some of the other guys, in this draft class.
I would agree. And I think the most important thing when you get to the NBA, 24-second shot clock, there just has to be quick decisions. And a lot of times your work has to be done in 1 to 3 dribbles. Yeah. Almost max for a lot of guys. There's only outside of that, there's not really a ton of guys that are going to be doing a ton of
clearing you out for 15 seconds and letting you cook.
TJ McConnell, like probing, gnashing underneath the basket. There's not much of that. So can you make quick decisions in those tight windows? And that's I think another area that he can definitely improve on, but there's a really, really solid foundation there.
You mentioned crowded on the wings here a little bit for the Wizards. They took another one with their 43rd pick also. But this team has not been afraid to play young guys the last couple of years, which is great, but also not afraid to utilize the G League for some of their other guys that need a little upside here. Do you think he would benefit from just getting minutes and getting reps early in the G League? And then maybe if they move off some of these vets at the trade deadline, then you start to incorporate them, him into the foundation of the team a little bit more.
I think so. I think he'll spend some time at least in the G League next year. And part of it's like people are like, oh, development, but certainly for confidence too. And just maybe even experimenting a little bit. Because we know if you're not in the rotation at the NBA level and you're not going to the G League, is don't practice much.
Right.
You're doing 2-week road
How do you get
trips
better?
and city to city. I mean, it's hard. I mean, I know they do a lot of breakdown drills with guys that aren't playing. They do, some 2-on-2, 3-on-3 stuff. But as far as like real basketball, 5-on-5 basketball, that's why the G League, I think, is just become a lot more prominent in the last few years. Like people really using it as a tool. But yeah, I mean, you talk about the roster. I mean, they went out and got McCollum. I mean, the $110 million in expirings in about a year. I mean, it's massive. So things could look really different for this team moving forward. I'm not totally convinced that Chris Middleton's going to be on the roster this year.
At least not long term.
I mean, or get dealt at the trade deadline. We'll see what happens in July. But just going on down, like you got Coulibaly, Kispert, obviously, and Keyshawn George is a guy that a lot of people comped Will Riley with. I mean, it's very interesting that they went after this, but it's funny how the narratives kind of change. I've really grown to trust Will Dawkins. I've grown to trust this Wizards front office and scouting department because by and large, when you talk to college coaches, they do the freaking work, man. They're at games more than anybody. They're at practice more than anybody. They dig into the analytical side more than anybody. They have contingency plans. That is like the really good sign for, and I know obviously Dawkins was able to experience that earlier in his career and see the success of it. But man, I like the way they're positioned for the future. Everybody talks about OKC and, hey, they're set up to be a dynasty and all this stuff, but on a much, much lower scale, I love what the Wizards are doing. And we didn't even talk about Trey Johnson. I had him third on what would be my big board. I can't say enough about him. I think he's going to be tremendous.
I want to get your thoughts on Johnson in a second here. Just staying with that sort of trust in this front office, and you mentioned contingency plans and things like that. I almost thought I think them wanting Ace Bailey thing was real. Obviously, they were happy to take Trey Johnson, but I almost felt like Will Riley was their sort of contingency plan for Ace Bailey as like a 6'8" tough shot maker. Do you think there's anything to that?
Yeah, and I think Jamir Watkins was like the contingency plan if Will's not ready. It's just it's funny. You can just see the layers to it. But no, I absolutely see it. I think there's really I know Ace is probably the more decorated, has more of the pedigree, but there are a lot of similarities between their games just from like a length standpoint. Will's got a little bit shorter wingspan, but size and just the ability to make tough shots and be willing to take tough shots. I totally see it. But again, you talked about it. Like they set themselves up to not be left there holding the bag when Danny Ainge decided to say, no, you're coming to Utah whether you like it or not.
That one, I'm still interested to see how that plays out.
I'm not sure he's there yet. I don't think he's from us recording this. I'm not sure he's in Salt Lake City yet.
Yeah, that's what I heard as an hour ago. So going to be fun to monitor. I'm glad that's their problem to worry about and not ours. You mentioned trust in this front office. I have 28 years of actively rooting for the fan base, like maybe let's say I was 10 maybe before I got like really locked in here. I still can't kind of get over this distrust of Wizards doing Wizards things. So when Kasparas Jakubonis is sitting on the board at 18 and still available, it's a guy I really liked, and they choose to trade back. At the moment, I thought, hey, this might end up being a mistake because I think he's going to be a really good basketball player. I don't know. Any thoughts on that as someone who also watched Jakubonis play a lot this year too? Yeah,
I mean, KJ is a guy that the pluses are real with him when you just talk about real playmaking ability. Before his injury, I mean, he was almost 41% from 3-on-5 attempts, and not easy ones either. And he had to carry the load as a guy coming over from Lithuania, which is a lot in the Big Ten. It's a lot for with an Illinois fan base that is very rabid. He's a rangy rebounder. Like he rebounds really well outside of his range, both offensively and defensively. But the negatives are real too with KJ. I mean, there's some things where when he played elite athleticism, it was really hard for him without a ball screen to get by guys. Now he mitigated it in a way where he could, he's really good with his footwork and playing off of 2 feet and up and unders and just being crafty with that. But some of the, you'd really have to buy into the pre-injury shooting.
Yeah.
You'd really have to buy into, hey, the turnover stuff was just a usage issue, and he's not going to have a 28% usage at the NBA level. But I think the biggest thing with him is just who he is as a kid. Like, he's a ultra fiery competitor and no ego at all. Despite coming over, being a potential top 5 pick at one point, no one on that team got the sense that it was like, oh man, he's too cool for school. Like, he just wanted to be a part of it. And really rose in big moments throughout the season. So I think the psyche for him is going to be really important. And I think is going to help him have a really successful career. And I'm really interested to see the fit in Miami. It's an equal opportunity system. And we know what Spoelstra does, kind of the playing 5 out with Bam and playing in the middle third with Bam and dribble handoff. So I think, he's going to have a chance to bring a lot of value for that team. So I'm excited for him. And I thought that he kind of got a steal there.
Yeah, I agree. I like that fit a lot for them too, just because I think he'll work, and they love guys that can work. You mentioned him off the court, or it's sort of locker room and a psyche presence. What's the sense for Will Riley? Like, we hear a lot about this front office valuing guys that are just like crazy, relentless, psycho workers. You hear that about Trey Johnson, who I still want to circle back to for a minute. But what's Will Riley like off the court from what you know?
Basketball.
Love that. Okay,
he's just basketball.
That's
like
cool.
I heard the Trey Johnson interview where he's like, I have no hobbies. I'm reading a book right now.
Probably about basketball. Yeah.
But Will is the exact same way, man. I mean, he's a guy, just from all the things that you hear from the staff and stuff, just all about the game, super coachable, and kind of like a historian of the game, knows the game. Those are the guys that I think you end up having giving themselves a chance. I want to say like they just have a successful career. But you give yourself a chance when you just don't, you limit off-court distractions and you're able to just go play and work on your development, which is now you go to the NBA, that's what you'll be doing exclusively full-time. So, yes, I mean, all the character stuff for Will, they didn't have a single issue with him this year, even though he came in as the highest-rated recruit in pretty much Illinois basketball history and came off the bench for most of the year. Had no problems.
Didn't pout. Yeah, that's
didn't pout, nothing. And I think that is – especially, you definitely want that for first round prospects, but especially second round NBA draft prospects, like you need a pretty squeaky clean resume, and you don't want to have any issues with guys like that. So Will's not one of those guys. He is all about ball all the time.
All right. You mentioned Trey Johnson, third on your board. I had the same thing for Wizards fans. What's the pitch for Trey Johnson here, and what'd you like so much about him?
Yeah, I just think for Trey, I think the level at which he executes his most elite trait might be higher than anyone else in the draft.
Yeah, I agree.
I think he's that elite of a scorer. I think, just like a lot of these guys, Con Knipple, some of these guys that can really shoot the cover off the ball, in a way, this happens to Steph Curry too. It's like, because you're such a good shooter, you just get kind of thrown in a certain bucket. It's like, oh, you can really shoot it. It's like some of the playmaking for Trey and his ability to kind of thread the needle on some passes. And he's not like the biggest advantage creator off the dribble. Like, he's not just going to put his head down and head ram to the basket. The finishing around the rim, I think, needs to get better. Playing off of 2 feet, I think he can do a better job of that. But his handle is so good because it allows him to create that space to free him up for his shot, or just have enough combos in the arsenal to get that sliver or angle to get past this guy even a little bit. For guys like Trey, some of the floaters, some of the 17-footers, I love seeing him, whether it's like with Sarr, or we'll see if they go out and get another big in free agency, just like simple pin downs. Him coming off a pin down where it's like, okay, I can't go under this. I can't shortcut it. I have to trail. So he may have a curl cut into a 14-footer. He may straight cut into a 3. He may curl cut and commit and get a big to commit. Now we got, he's a good enough playmaker, like I talked about, to make that read off a curl cut and throw a lob, drop off pass for a dunk. I mean, that's all the things, just very, very simple things out of the box that you can do with Trey Johnson. So really excited about that pick because, again, I had him third just because I think it's hard to pass up on a guy that I think is going to be potentially a 25-point per game scorer in the NBA. He's got that type of offensive skill set.
I feel the exact same way, and I thought he was a guy that getting to see him in person, things really clicked for me about what he can do, and just not to just blame everything for every prospect I like on their team and fit, but that was a Texas team that ran a very weird, clunky offense. He didn't have a ton of space, and it just seemed like a lot of times he was just kind of going out there and he was trying some stuff on the fly as well, and more of it worked than it didn't. I feel like that's really exciting, and I do buy the passing big time here, and I just felt like they weren't really like set up to capitalize on that to the best extent. That would have made him look really good on paper, from an assist per games, perspective and things like that too.
I agree. And I think it wasn't the most sophisticated offensive system that he was in. I didn't think Rodney Terry did a particularly good job of putting him in spots. Like there was a lot of stuff he just conjured out of thin air.
Yeah, agreed.
And that's just the level of scorer that he was. For him to be as efficient as he was in that conference,
crazy.
Lead that conference in scoring as a freshman, that's just, that's stupid stuff, man.
And honestly, without like a real point guard, essentially, no one really made offense easier for him at any point. Like Tremont Mark did some things, but not a point guard. And Trey himself is not like a pure point guard, so like just, yeah, I thought that he was that efficient year one. Is just, it's crazy stuff. And I look forward to it. Mike, maybe just real quick here. I don't want to keep you all afternoon here, but just immediate reaction to Jamir Watkins. I'm sure you got to see him a little bit this year too.
Yeah, I really like him. Yeah, I talked about Trey Johnson not being like a head rammer, get to the rim. That is Jamir Watkins. He's almost 8 free throws attempts a game this year. Really electric in transition. Good athlete, really good athlete. I just think he's just one of those guys that, for a second round pick, you in the mid 40s or wherever you ended up being. I like going and getting a guy like that with the experience, the age. I like the blend of, he's able to really kind of get up and down to Florida State in this, free flowing way that they played. Yep. Then he also has things that he can fall back on from VCU, whereas really kind of a slower pace, surrounded by a lot of dogs. Like I think this Wizards team has a lot of dogs. You look at Coulibaly and Carrington, like all these guys that want to accept the challenge. Yep. I think Draymond Green was talking about it last year. He's like, dude, I'm playing the Wizards. Like these young guys talk more shit than anybody, any team we played against. So that I think will fit in well with Jamir Watson. I really like the pick.
Yeah, he just seems like a chip on the shoulder guy. And the fact that he was in an ACC where it was basically, he was taking like a spork to a knife fight most nights with the roster around him and never backed down from the challenge. He's like, oh, cool, I'll just go get 20 on Duke. Like they know I'm going to shoot every time, but I'm going to will it to happen. I love stuff like that. So I'm excited too. Mike, for anybody listening to this that wants more great college basketball coverage, where can they find you?
Field 68. We will be doing, we have our After Dark shows. I'll be doing some more personal content on there this year. Illini Inquirer with some of the Illinois stuff. Do some film breakdown stuff on my X as well coming up this year. I'll be doing NBA and college. So at LaTulip_Mike is where you can find me. And yeah, man, appreciate you having me on here.
Love it. Yeah. Anybody Wizards fans, trust me, if you want to get smarter in college basketball, we're probably going to be in for another big draft next year as well. So get ahead of the curve. Mike and the guys will be breaking these guys down throughout the season. So follow Field of 68, follow Mike. You won't regret it. Mike, thanks again for doing this. Hopefully we can catch up on other prospects maybe throughout the year and do another one of these. So that'd be awesome. Everybody remember, hit that like button for us down in the comments if you can. Rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we will catch you next time.